28 years later. What is going on, everybody? It's your boy DBGTX-YT, and welcome to the Legacy of Kakarot, a two-part mini documentary series on this channel that is leading up to, of course, Dragon Ball Z Kakarot's release on January 17th of 2020. Today, or in this video, I am going to be discussing two major video games that live in the hearts and mind of the older generation fans of Dragon Ball Z gaming. Also, there are people who are new to the series, of course, that haven't heard of such games before or have never played of these games, either because of course, timing, of course, age, of course, of different factors that made it virtually impossible to get your hands on a copy of this game unless you was doing it with ROMs or something like that, which can of course be illegal and so on and so forth. Nonetheless, not here to discuss ROMing or anything like that. We're here to go down this beautiful memory lane that is right, nostalgia, everything that these two games not only represent in the nostalgia and in the minds and memories of us, the early 90s community of gamers, but also one of the biggest key things that Cyber 2 Connect has paid homage to in this up and coming game, and I would like you guys to see alongside with me what these key things were, what were the special homages, and of course I want you guys to also stay on the lookout as you guys play Dragon Ball Z Kakarot on January 17th for all these hit bits, pieces, hints, clues, Easter eggs, and such that were included from these majestic games. Without further ado, or without further talking, I'm gonna go ahead and begin the very first part of this documentary, starting with the very first open world RPG for Dragon Ball Z. That is right, the very first open world RPG released in 1992, Supa Saiya Densetsu, the legend of the legendary Super Saiyan. Let's begin. Whether it was the nostalgic 16-bit rendition of our fan favorite OSTs from the original Japanese dub, or the super RPG elements design, the overhead world, open world, Supa Saiya Densetsu, the legend of the Super Saiyan, is the ancestor slash grandfather of the open world Dragon Ball Z Kakarot that we know today. A lot of people date the legacy of Goku as the starting point for Cyber Connect 2, from where they got most of their inspiration from. But little do a lot of people know that this game existed beforehand. In 1992, for the Super Famicom, or Super Nintendo as we know it, was released Supa Saiya Densetsu. This particular game only came out in the Eastern Hemisphere, and unfortunately, to the Western Hemisphere's demise, nobody got an original English translated copy. It was never made. Nonetheless, in 2000 or 2001, some modders slash other enthusiasts and fans went ahead and did translations of the coding, so that way we could have in the Western Hemisphere a copy of the version of the game fully translated, although illegal, through ROMs. And it featured a lot of elements that was already being featured for certain things, like the Game Boy Dragon Ball game that came out, which later on was also adapted into the more modern version of that particular Dragon Ball RPG called Attack of the Saiyans. In this particular case though, this game was the first open world RPG, and it literally opened the world to the RPG elements to Dragon Ball Z, where at a time between 1990 and 1996 there was a lot more games catering to, of course, the 2D fighting, such as Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat. Supa Saiya Densetsu begins at the beginning of the Saiyan arc and pretty much has you follow T for T the first portion of the story, where you have to rescue Gohan. In an open world, it would not allow you to overtrain your characters, and you had to follow certain guidelines in order to be able to beat Raditz. If those guidelines were not followed, you would promptly lose, and you would have to start from the very beginning of the game, which I thought was an excellent implementation of, do you know the story, and can you follow directions as far as getting all of the element pieces, which was very different, again, like I mentioned, because in this part in time there were many games that were being made for fighting purposes in 2D elements, including Dragon Ball, which released Super Butoden. Nonetheless, this game came with a different feel, and it was very well accepted in the community, in the Japanese community. There are plenty of Twitter folks and friends that, after I released a snippet of this video, showed me that they have also played this game, whether it was on ROM or whether they came by it, on Super Famicom in Japan or anything like that of the sort. But it does truly exist in the nostalgic minds of us, the early Dragon Ball Z folks. In the bigger scheme of things, Cyber 2 Connect took a lot from this game and implemented it into Dragon Ball Z Kakarot. Some of those things include, and not limited to, the training on King Kai's planet, Gohan's training. We have also the what if elements that are included in almost every Dragon Ball Z game since this game's release. In particular, the biggest what if at the time, because of the timing of this game came out right around the time that the Frieza saga was going into the next arc, so there wasn't a real clear cut ending to what was happening in the Frieza saga and such. So this game came up with what if scenarios of as to how the Frieza saga will end after Goku beats Frieza, and if you did a lot of different things throughout the game, you could get different story that will round out kind of similar but not the exact same way as it played out in the actual anime or in the manga, which I thought was an amazing quip and an amazing thing that they did, especially for a game back then that it was again testing waters when it came down to RPG front with Dragon Ball as far as the Super Nintendo. To conclude, Supa Saiya Densetsu lives in the hearts of not only a lot of the folks in CC2, but also a lot of folks in the Middle East, in Brazil, in Latin America, pretty much all over the world. And it's interesting that this game that did not get released in the Western Hemisphere is so huge in the Dragon Ball gaming community, with original 16-bit similar sounding music so they wouldn't get copyrighted at the time, and pretty much in-game animation, including the first ever in-game transformation. Supa Saiya Densetsu is the ancestor and grandfather of Dragon Ball Z Kakarot. Hope you guys enjoyed this video, enjoy the homage, and next time we will be visiting another game that came out around the same time, just about a year or so later from Supa Saiya Densetsu, and that game had all of the mini games and events that are being included in this particular Dragon Ball Z game that is coming up. Hope to see you guys next time. DBGTX over and out.